Well, hey there, Express fans. Welcome into our very special Hairy Man edition of Sidetracked, presented by Dell Technologies. My name is Andrew Feltz, and under all this get-up, I am the manager of PR and communications for the Round Rock Express. We're excited to spend the next hour or so to kind of shed some light on the local Hairy Man legend, talk about our forthcoming Round Rock Express theme night, in which the E-Train are going to transform into the Hairy Men, and a nod to the local legend. It's part of our What Could Have Been series, where we look at alternate team names from when the team was founded in 2000. Quick primer if you're tuning in and you're wondering what on earth is a Round Rock Hairy Man. Local legend to our town. Reportedly, a young boy got lost from his parents during the pioneer days when the caravans were coming west through Round Rock. He grew up in the woods, obviously became a rather hairy hermit, spent his life kind of living in the trees, scaring away the visitors that would come through and the other passers-by. As the legend goes, he was up in the trees one day scaring folks, fell out of the trees, was trampled to death, and has spent the rest of eternity scaring those folks that pass by the Hairy Man Road that bears his name on the northwest side of town. Well, I know what you all are thinking, and that is, where can I get one of these sweet beards? The answer is the Rail Yard Team Store. I want to highlight our entire line of Hairy Man merchandise, including ball caps, this beard get up, and of course we have our Viatran Team Rail Yard Team Store item of the week. It is our socially distant before it was cool tee. We've got these on sale for $28. The Rail Yard Team Store, like we said, an entire line of Hairy Man merchandise is available. Check out rrexpress.com to shop all of that, and of course all the regular Round Rock Express gear that we have year-round available through the Rail Yard Team Store. Again, thanks to our friends at Viatran for hooking us up with a lot of the really cool Hairy Man merch that you're going to see on the show today and moving forward as we get ready for this theme night. Well, with that, I think it's time to introduce our three guests for this week. We're going to be joined momentarily by Jane DiGesualdo. She is a local historian and an author, and she is really an expert on the Hairy Man legend and really all things that go into the history of Round Rock. After that, we're going to be joined by Jason Klein. He's a co-founder of the design firm Brandiose. They helped us come up with, of course, our Round Rock Express marks and the Hairy Man logo imagery concept that you're going to see this afternoon, so it should be fun to pick his brain about how that came about. Finally, our last interview this afternoon is going to be with our resident Hairy Man expert, a native of Alaska and current pitcher for the Houston Astros. His name is, of course, Sneed. He'll be joining us at the end of the show for our final segment. As always, like we've said every week, we encourage you guys to get involved. If you have questions, want to hear more about the Hairy Man, get involved. Leave us a question, leave us comments. We're going to try our best to get to those throughout the show today down in the chat. Well, with that, I think it's time to hitch up our wagons and giddy up into our first segment titled Leading Off, presented by HEB. Excited now to welcome in Jane DiGesualdo. She is a local historian, author of the book Historical Round Rock, Texas. Like we said, she is perhaps one of the most knowledgeable minds about the local Hairy Man legend. We're excited to welcome her into Sidetracked here as soon as I shave this beard off my face. Well, Jane, thank you so much for joining us here on Sidetracked, presented by HEB. Certainly unprecedented times for the city of Round Rock and for our country. So before we get into the legend of the Hairy Man, I want to ask how you're doing this afternoon.
Doing very well, thank you. And you?
Excellent. Well, we're doing well. You know, we can't complain. We're excited to chat with you and kind of go through and learn a little bit more about this legend. But before we get too deep into that, I want to ask you about you and kind of your career, how you became an expert on all things history of the city of Round Rock.
I started because my family is, they're very history oriented. We have a long family history, not in the area, but when we moved here, I would go to the schools and do historical talks for different holidays and so forth. And so the children would ask, well, do you have a book? What about this? Where can I find information? So it started that way. And Karen Thompson was doing something similar too. So we just started because of children asking questions.
Well, that's great. You mentioned Karen Thompson, of course, a co-author for your book, Historical Round Rock, Texas. Tell us a little bit about that project. We know it took the hundreds of interviews. You had hundreds of photos you compiled. The book topped out at 583 pages, sold out of 2 different publication runs. It really is still the definitive source for history in Round Rock, Texas. Take us through kind of what that project was like for you and Karen.
It was time consuming. It was the family had to pitch in and eat a few meals that were not the bestly prepared quite well. And it was very interesting because we got to meet so many of the people, and so many of the people we interviewed were not what we call the quote A team, and they appreciated being considered and having their history recorded. And I would take them a lot of times to the schools, and they would do oral history talks with the students. And some of the people, they were so appreciative of this because, let's say, some of them had colorful backgrounds. So, and it's just sharing and making people appreciate from whence they cometh.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, that's the best way to get it, right? From the folks that lived it and know it and can retell it. This, of course, our special Hairy Man episodes is a show we do every week, but we've kind of detoured a little bit to focus 100% on the Hairy Man. So there might be some of our fans that are watching, maybe that don't know, that are confused, that are wondering what on earth we're talking about. So there's kind of nods to the Hairy Man legend all over the city. The Parks and Recreation Department has really tied it into a lot of our local parks around here. Of course, you touched on Hairy Man Road. There's a Hairy Man Festival, but we're kind of going back to how this myth kind of came about, or this local legend, the boy that was on the wagon and kind of was raised in the wilderness. What can you kind of shed light on from that kind of side of the story?
Well, there are this area that where the legend was originated from was not a very good area to be in. It was not good for farming, and there's caves and karsts, and it was a legend that really it came about after the cars were invented. That's when it came back in the 30s and the 40s, when we had more automobiles that could go down there, because the wagons were not that easy to transverse that area, because you'd have to go down Sam Bass Road, you'd have to go down past the cemetery, then take a left down the hill, and it was a dry river crossing if the waters weren't up. So it wasn't paved originally. It was a gravel road, and the farmers would go there with their wagons, like you said, but the cars started going there when they started to put gravel in it. Mm-hmm. And there are caves all along there, and just to see the area along the creek with all of the trees and the animals, the owls hooting at night, the foxes running through the woods, and all those sounds were coming when someone was going down there, because the lights could only come from the headlights, if they had any headlights on the cars. And the wagons were almost impossible to get down there because of the roughness of the road. The area also has the low water crossings, so if in times of floods, no one could get down there. Mm-hmm. So animals and critters roamed, and who knows what lived down there off those animals and critters. A lot of people hunted, and they're on. Have you ever been down on Carryman Road?
I have, yeah, a couple times. Yes.
Okay, you know where Fern Bluff is? The actual Fern Bluff, not the development. There used to be some caves back in that the stones have filled up the entrances. So is it possible that something was living in those caves in there? So that area has, as the people would pick up rocks and go in there, maybe someone lived in there. There was the Saul family had the property to the east of there, and that was like a washout area during a heavy rainstorm. The roads would be totally covered with water. There was no way to get in there and get out of there, and some of those caves filled up with water. So it was a situation Who knows what was down there? Who knows what is still down there? We have foxes, wolves, and all kinds of critters that roam down there. And I've even seen a few dead dogs along that road too.
Wow. Well, that could lend to the legend that would be conducive to maybe somebody that was living out there and startling folks and spooking people. We are meeting with Jane DiGesualdo. She is a local historian and author, very knowledgeable about all things Round Rock, the city, or the history of our city, Hairy Man legend. Jane, I want to ask, we're really excited at the Round Rock Express to be able to host this theme night sometime in the future. The team's going to rebrand as the Round Rock Hairy Men. We're going to have jerseys and hats and all sorts of memorabilia. We've showed the logo, and we're excited to kind of inform our fans and inform people in minor league baseball about this legend and this uniqueness to our city. But I'm curious, from your perspective, how important do you think it is that we as a community kind of celebrate these things and keep these legends from the past alive today?
Well, the legends, there are a lot of people who want to be legends, and I know a lot of people who do not want to be legends because of some of their mistakes that they are misjudgments. Let's not call them mistakes, misjudgments that they made. And who's to know who actually was down there doing those things? Was that a person? Now, Josiah Wilbarger lived not too far from there, who wrote Indian Depredations, and he lived just east of that area. And if you know your Texas history, that is a very important area. There's springs are down there. There's fresh water. There's all kinds of things and animals that could be used for nourishment in that area. It's not a place of doom and gloom. It provides a lot of sanctuary for critters and people alike over the generations. It can be celebrated. It can be feared.
Jane, thank you so much. Such a fun conversation. It's so cool to hear your perspective and learn more about this legend and the history of our city. We really appreciate you taking the time this afternoon to chat with us.
You're most welcome. Well, it is important to preserve the history.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. We're going to have you out to Del Diamond whenever it is that we host this theme night, so you can take part in our festivities and our celebrations with us. But that was Jane DiGesualdo, local historian, author of the book Historical Round Rock, Texas, joining us here on Sidetracked, presented by HEB. We're going to throw it to a quick commercial break, and when we come back, be joined with Jason Klein of Brandiose right after this.
When you live in a city with the best of everything, you expect the best. Especially in those critical moments when you need it the most. It's why we've built an emergency care network that's ready around the clock, with more locations, less wait time, and the highest quality care. That's the care you expect and deserve. St. David's Emergency Care. The best is here.
Welcome back into Sidetracked, presented by Dell Technologies. My name is Andrew Feltz. I want to take just a minute to highlight Nolan Ryan Beef as our sponsor shout out this week. Of course, Nolan Ryan Beef provides all the delicious hamburgers, hot dogs, and more that all the fans can enjoy out at Del Diamond each and every season. And they also have stepped up to be a big member of our community, especially now during this difficult time that we are all facing. They've been a longtime supporter of the Texas Baptist Children's Home. They recently donated meals to all 25 families currently using the home's services. In addition, Nolan Ryan Beef has joined forces with the Round Rock Express, Nolan Ryan Foundation, and RS3 Strategic Hospitality to donate meal kits to the frontline workers at St. David's Round Rock Medical Center. They've also done a similar program up in Frisco, Texas, in a partnership with the Dallas Stars and Comerica Center, as well as RS3 Strategic Hospitality, to provide meal kits to the nurses at Medical City Healthcare. On behalf of all of us at the Round Rock Express, we want to extend a big thank you to everyone at Nolan Ryan Beef, not only for being a great partner of the Express, but for stepping up and helping out our community where you can during this difficult time. Well, with that, we're going to transition now into our second interview this afternoon. It's for our batting cleanup segment presented by WHATABURGER. Jason Klein and Casey White co-founded Brandiose. It's a California-based design agency that has provided logos and branding for countless teams across all different sports around the country. They've really turned into an industry leader in minor league baseball and helped the Express develop our new logos and marks that we unveiled prior to 2019, as well as the Harry Man logos that you've seen here today. Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate spending some time to talk through Brandiose and, of course, the Harry Man legend. But before we get started, how are things out there in San Diego?
I mean, it's crazy times for everybody, but this is the most fun industry in the world. So the idea that we get to get on and talk about Harry Man, I'm so excited about this.
Absolutely, me too. We're going to get to that in just a second, but I really want to start with you and kind of educating our fans about Brandiose, what they do. Take us through kind of how Brandiose was born and the just tremendous growth that you guys have seen over the last several years.
Yeah, so our story is my business partner and I, Casey White, we've been best friends since kindergarten. And as kids, we were always like daydreaming and doodling, and we loved telling stories. And I think part of that was this idea of having Disneyland in your backyard here in California. And this idea that you could leave your everyday cares behind and you step into like this whole nother world where 1 minute you're, in your car and the next minute you're in the Wild West, and like the music and the costumes and the sounds and the barbecue, like it's amazing. And I love this idea that you could use this power of storytelling to transport, a guest to a whole nother world. And so fast forward, we were doing design work for local high schools in San Diego, and we were in college at that time. And somebody said, you guys should really get into doing some work for minor league baseball. So we sent 150 letters to every minor league baseball on the planet team. And one got back to us, said, if we like it, we'll buy it. That was the West Tennessee Diamond Jacks. And from that point forward, we use this idea of the sort of Disney-style storytelling and this idea of creating experiences where guests can leave their everyday cares behind and step into a story to bring that to minor league baseball. And in 2 decades, we've worked with every minor league baseball team in some capacity. We've done over 50 rebrands, and we're all about what are the unique stories of our hometown communities, and how do we take these great stories of America and celebrate them in every possible way in the ballpark. And that's a little bit about who we are and how we got started.
Hi, so there's a couple things from there that I'd like to unpack. Of course, you guys are an industry leader in minor league baseball with logos, branding, mascots, kind of the look of each team's different identities, from primaries to alternates, like what we're talking about here today. But Brandiose does so much more than that. Kind of take us through, outside of maybe just a logo standpoint, some of the other things that you guys do.
Yeah, we're very well known for coming up with logos for teams. Obviously, the Express logos. We've done logos for some Major League Baseball teams. That's what we get a lot of publicity for. But we also help clubs every year find ways to connect with their fans. So it may be developing a theme park style map. When you walk to the ballpark, how do you make it fun? Designing new mascots. Coming up with, concession, novelty food items, thinking up ideas like, how do you engage in this story in ways that you can buy merchandise. So we're always looking for unique ways to tell stories, and it's not just through logos, but through the entire experience. So that's, other ways that maybe are not as well known, but we do a lot of work in every year.
Absolutely, and that's a great transition kind of into my question about the current situation that everybody's in. Of course, life's different for everybody, especially, all of us in minor league baseball as well. Our marketing department, the other 159 teams across the country have all had to get creative on staying engaging, staying connected to their fans. I'm curious, from your standpoint out there at Brandiose and kind of the assistance that you guys provide to a lot of the clubs, how have you kind of adapted to this current landscape that we're all facing?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're like everybody. You kind of go through the stages of grief, which is denial, like this is not going to be a big thing, this is not happening, to getting angry, like why is this happening to us? And then you go into like bargaining, like, oh please, can't there anything we can do to make this go away? And then you get into the acceptance phase. So that's we got there as quick as one could be in the current climate. And there were two things that we realized. One is, it is a challenge when you don't have fans to run a business. Definitely when you have fans that, spend money on merchandise and, as everybody knows, like it's difficult to run a business when you don't have fans to the gates. So we did two things specifically to pivot. One of them was we started a weekly ideas show. And what we do is every week we get everybody in the industry to get on board, and we do a live broadcast and we do an interview just like we're doing here. And we ask the leaders of the industry to share their playbook on how they are earning revenue, how they are, succeeding, doing well. How do you lead in this crisis? How do you be a good member of your community? How do you serve your fans? And so every week we have a different operator show up, and it's good for two reasons. One is clubs really want ideas, but also it's great because it can get lonely. You wonder, is anybody else going through what I'm going through? And to have those operators show up and be able to say, oh, you know what? Like that club's going through exactly what we're going through. So that's like one thing that we're doing. The other thing that we're doing that's more the team side. On the fan side, the other thing that we're doing is, like us, there's so many, designers, creatives out there who always dreamed of this, like seeing their logo on a New Era hat. And Casey and I thought, like, well, is there a way that we could create that opportunity? Could we give a once in a lifetime chance for, designers and creatives and anybody who ever dreamed of seeing their work on a hat to be able to have that opportunity? So we fired up an old idea that we have called the Clink Room. And it's the clink, as in like clinking two adult beverages together, room.com. And what it is we take the website and we have Instagram. And as a designer, you can download the templates for the caps. You can design your own, cap design, and then you put it on Instagram. You tag us, and every week we draft creatives into, a sort of virtual league. And the entire world can buy your design. And as long as we meet the minimums, hat's going to go into production. It's going to be cut from the same cloth as, the Astros, the Express, your favorite team. It's, going to be done in the same factory as Major League Baseball hats. So it's a really cool program that we're doing. So I'd say if you're listening and you always dreamed of getting your design on a hat, go to theclinkroom.com. And it's kind of like our after hours clubhouse is the way that we look at it, the back of Brandiose Studios. So it's a lot of fun.
That is so fantastic. I'm sure you're the same boat. Everybody wishes we were playing baseball and that things were normal, but there's so many cool ideas and cool experiences like this that are kind of born out of this different period that we're in. So that's really awesome. An awesome program to encourage folks to take part in that if that's something that interests you. We are visiting with Jason Klein. He's one of the co-founders of Brandiose here on Sidetracked, presented by WHATABURGER. Jason, you pointed to the wall behind you. You guys have developed so many brands, so many identities for teams all over the country. Unique markets, big markets, small markets, really wide cross-section of the country. What goes into kind of creating these designs that embody the city where the team plays?
Well, we feel like it's really a disservice for us to build a brand for a community that we've never been to. So the very first thing that we love to do is pack our bags, get on a plane, and spend time being honorary citizens and meeting with fans and season ticket holders. And we love meeting with, members of the government and, whoever we can sit and talk to and find out what is the story behind this place that makes it special, what makes it unique. what makes it different from other cities in the state, what makes it different from other cities in the country. And, that research is really important for us to distinguish that story and to figure out, like, what is the nuance? And not only how do we create something that locals will celebrate and say, yes, that's us, but somebody who's not a local will look at that and say, oh my gosh, I want to celebrate that story. I want to buy that hat. I want to buy that t-shirt. So we're always looking for how do we tell that story? And the first step is always research.
That was great. I remember you guys came to town. Man, it feels like it was 10 years ago, but it was before our rebrand, before we switched to the Astros affiliation, of course, our big 20th season party. But yeah, I want to ask you about your time in Round Rock specifically. You guys have helped us, like we said, our primary logo, our new express marks, the Hairy Man, the Round Rock jackalopes, the armadillos that we did a couple years ago, our faux back look. Kind of take us through specifically Round Rock and kind of what you remember from that experience.
I mean, we walked literally across the street and had some of the most amazing barbecue ever. We went to Round Rock Donuts. We saw the actual Round Rock. We met with, fans and community leaders. And again, it was really about us immersing ourselves in the community and understanding what makes us unique. What are these stories that we can tell? And every community has different stories, and there's sort of a hierarchy, right? So there's like the primary story that we want to talk about, which is our namesake, the Express, and our connection to Nolan, and all of everything how do we celebrate what a world-class operation, and I mean that at the bottom of my heart is that, for those listening, the Express is one of the most revered, celebrated, world-class organizations in all of minor league baseball. And to be able to say, okay, we know that's true. How do we create a brand that says that? And there's little design nuances. Symmetrical designs in studies have shown to be communication of trust. So you'll see a lot of what we've done with the brand is about being symmetrical. The other thing that we realized was we hadn't celebrated the actual Round Rock. Right? So it's been this brand for years. We've never really seen it inside the logo. And one of the things that's really important to us is that, when you're little, you are told that, well, if something has to be explained, it's a bad idea, right? And now with the internet, that's changed everything. So the internet allows you to instantly look something up. And so, when we think about design, we think about, how do we create a design that's more of a question, where people go, wait a minute, what is that sleeve patch? Or what is that design? I don't know what that is. Can somebody explain that to me? Now, obviously, you can go on the internet and look it up. But most importantly, somebody has that answer, and they will tell you and say, well, that's actually the physical Round Rock. That's like what the community is named after. And what has ensued is like a 5-minute advertisement for the Round Rock Express. So this old idea that it has to be explained and instantly recognizable on the first pass. No. It should be a question. It should be a question where it invites people who are outsiders in to become insiders. They're told by somebody else. Now they're an insider. They tell another outsider, and then it spreads and spreads and spreads. So to answer your question, the most important thing was how do we communicate world class? How do we celebrate the actual Round Rock, and the part of Texas that we're in, how do we celebrate that in a way that's unique, and the type of fonts? And so it was, we went in even as deep to sort of, okay, where is the meaning of the railroad in the history of Round Rock, and how do we connect, and how do we create the cow catcher on the front of the E to be more authentic to the actual trains that would have passed through 100 years ago. So that's kind of the way that we thought about it.
I'm glad you brought that up about the Round Rock logo. That was something that, we'd worked back and forth with you guys on for our 20th anniversary or our 20th season. It's our sleeve patch, and it was funny to see pretty much exactly what you described. The people that lived in Round Rock are familiar, that have seen it, that have driven by, like, oh yeah, it's a Round Rock. But maybe the folks outside that are in Austin or is further south Texas or outside of kind of our little city, they're like, what on earth is this? And like you said, we were able to tell the story, and it's, oh yeah, of course, the Round Rock, and we're going to keep that on our sleeve patch indefinitely for now. So we're excited to have those marks back. We've got to talk about Hairy Man, kind of the whole point of our show this week. This is something that we as a staff have been wanting to do for several years. We finally had the opportunity to do it. Been working with you guys and your design team, of course, to bring it to life and to come up with these logos and marks and the word mark and everything. Take us through kind of what your initial reaction was when you heard about this idea and this local legend.
Oh man, we were in love the minute we heard it. And because one of the questions that we always ask the community that we're going to visit whenever we start a new project is, are there any ghost stories? Are there any legends? Do you have like a Sasquatch character? And 90% of the time, everybody goes, no, I don't think so. Or they'll say, I think that one house might be haunted. But there's never any of those stories. We're always looking for those like cryptozoological, Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster type stories. And then he comes Hairy Man, right? We're like, no, my gosh, it's great. And the thing that was most exciting to us is color provides such an important signal of the brand. And we knew that we had to, we wanted to bring in Texas colors. It's like it's the sort of a red, sort of a Texas orange beard, and so there's a little bit of nod to obviously the region and UT and Austin, and and that color and how prominent it is to this part of Texas. And it also made a lot of sense that would be this sort of I don't know, like what am I thinking of? Yosemite Sam kind of character, a little bit, if you will. A little ragtag, so we got there's sort of ragtag Texas flag in there as I'm looking at the design as we're talking here. And just kind of like, it's kind of a boogeyman as I'm looking at it, kind of crazy and a little creepy and, very Texas, but a little unwieldy. And so we wanted to celebrate it. And the way that, as we're designing to give listeners get them inside of the way that we think, we have to figure out how do we represent this mythology with the least amount of elements to keep it simple, but also to design in a way that it reads instantly. You're basically, it's like a punchline. It has to be read really quickly. It also has to be something where we talked about, people go, wait, what is that? Like, please explain to me what's on your head, because it looks like a crazy man. There's a Texas thing going on. So you're trying to find, how do we tell a story in literally 80 millimeters by 80 millimeters, which is how much real estate you have. And so you have to keep it really tiny and you have to tell a story. The other thing that is a challenge is, embroidery is the least forgiving of any place that a team logo will appear. So you not only have 80 millimeters by 80 millimeters, but your lines, you'll notice sports logos generally have a little more thick lines. And that's because the embroidery, for it to come out right, you kind of need to thicken the lines, because it's not always going to be perfect. So the challenges of, thick lines, embroidery, keeping it simple, trying to tell the story with the least amount of elements, because you don't want to complicate it. So that's the way that we think about it. And for this one of the things that we also thought about was, we thought about classic, classic characters like Mr. Met and Mr. Redlegs and the Swinging Friar. If you look at even classic Major League Baseball teams, the Indians, you look at the Red Sox, all of those teams had a mid-century, from the 40s to about the 70s, and still for today, they have this character that appears on the side of the sleeve patch, sort of like mid-century serial, snap, crackle, and pop age character. And so we're trying to think, how do we take the Hairy Man story and put a character inside of that universe that pays tribute to these other major league characters before? So I don't want to put you guys in a bind, but that also could be a character that winds up finding its way on uniforms indefinitely.
Hey, there you go. And nothing wrong with that. I want to say too, kudos to you and kudos to your team. I mean, just embodying the kind of the urban legend and the baseball theme. And of course, you guys know through your work with El Paso and Amarillo and the like, but nobody loves Texas more than Texans. So the fact that we're able to incorporate the flag, and like you said, it's uniquely Texan as soon as you look at it, I think it's just such a phenomenal job on this logo. Last thing I want to mention, ask you about. I don't want to put you on the spot. It is our Hairy Man show. We talked a lot about the Hairy Man with our guests previously, and of course, we're going to talk to one of our players who has got a big bushy beard. He and I were texting back and forth, and I shared with him the logo, and he was just so fired up about this idea. But where would you kind of rank the Hairy Man in terms of uniqueness on projects that you guys have worked on out there?
Right. So I can't say like, what my favorite project, because that's like, hey, which kid is your favorite?
Right, that's no fair.
Right?
We wouldn't put you on the spot like that.
I'm not just saying this. It really is special because, the story of Texas and Texas imagery has been done over and over and over. And it's really difficult to be able to say, how are we going to tell the story of Texas, or how are we going to represent Texas imagery in a unique way that's never been done before, when A, you have to have the flag, B, you have to have these colors. I mean, the only other entity I would think that would be more difficult is Canada, because Canada uses like red and white and the maple leaf, and it's got to be on everything. You can't. That's the only way to do it, right? So I think of it as like it's a real challenge. And what was exciting to me is, obviously the color blocking, where you have Texas colors, but you kind of add a twist, right? Where you're throwing in maybe a nod to sort of the region and UT and that orange that's so popular in the region. I love the sort of old school, front panel that's white, so it really makes the character pop. I love that it's dripping with what's what I'm looking for? Emotion. It's dripping with story. It's so potent as an icon, and not all characters that we work on. It's not only some of them are easier, but how do I say this? Less challenging, but maybe the result is not as potent. I think this was a very challenging order, and I think it's really potent. And I love the story. I love that it gets people to ask, "What is that? Tell me the story."
That is awesome. Well, we can't wait to be able to host this theme night. Like I said, it's something we've been working on for a couple of years. Who knows when that might be? Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. But Jason, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time and the insight. Such a fun interview, and getting to kind of hear the behind the scenes of what goes into all of this.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I love this. I love telling our story. And please, if you're listening, get your hands on Hairy Man merchandise. It will get your friends asking you, what is that? And you will get to tell the story of the legend of the Hairy Man.
That is awesome. Couldn't have said it better myself. Of course, a lot of different merch available at the Rail Yard Team store. A lot of help from Jason and his team out there on coming up with the branding, the look of that. And like I said, just knocks it out of the park. Jason Klein joining us here on Sidetracked, presented by WHATABURGER, one of the co-founders of Brandiose. We're going to kick it to a quick break. When we come back, we join with Sneed right after this.
It goes without saying, there's nothing we won't do for our kids. That means giving them our best, especially when they need it most. With an emergency care network that treats every emergency, big or small, with the highest level of care possible. You want the best for your kids, and so do we. St. David's Emergency Care. The best is here.
Welcome back into Sidetracked, presented by Dell Technologies. My name is Andrew Feltz. Our closer segment this afternoon is presented by Pepsi. We're excited now to be joined by a familiar face for a lot of Express fans, pitched for both the Express and the Astros in 2019. He is also our local go-to expert on all things beards, facial hair, hairy men, the whole deal. So it's a very fitting that Sneed is joining us on our show this week from his home in Alaska. First off, how you doing?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Doing really good. Just enjoying the great outdoors here in Alaska.
Absolutely. It looks beautiful up there. A little jealous of the scenery you've got going on. But we got to start off. You are maybe the most interesting man in baseball, in my opinion, if not the entire world. Born in Nevada, raised in Idaho. You pitched collegiately at Dallas Baptist University. That's where you met your wife, Hannah. She lived in Alaska, the reason you're up there now. We did a really cool program feature on you last year for the in-stadium program at Del Diamond. And a big part of that story was you actually drive back home to Alaska at the end of every season. You did it from Corpus Christi in 2017, from Fresno, California in 2018. I got two questions. A, did you do that last year? And B, tell us about just that driving all the way across the country through Canada back up to home in Alaska.
So it's a long drive, as you can imagine. It's I think it took us 10 days from Corpus Christi. It's like 5,300 miles. It's a long way. So we actually didn't do the drive last year. We just didn't need to. It was kind of how everything was working out. So we did half of the drive and drove to Idaho and left my pickup there and then flew up here. But yeah, it's a haul, but truly, if you're somebody who loves just scenery, road trips, anything like that, it is worth the drive. It is beautiful. Really, after British Columbia, it is just gorgeous, and depending on what route you pick, but it's really, really nice, and just, huge mountains, and you got, a lot of nice people along the way, and, all kinds of wildlife, and you name it, you pretty much see it on the drive. So it's awesome.
It was so much fun to get to put that story together and talk to you. And some of the pictures that you shared from along the drive were just so cool to see. In addition to that, you're an avid outdoorsman, an avid hunter. You are a substitute teacher when you're not pitching up there in Alaska. Tell us about, the average day in the life of Cy Sneed when it's not, the heat of baseball season.
Yeah. So, every day, you got to start it right with a nice cup of coffee. That is the absolute priority. So, that's how we get things kicked off. And, I'm kind of an early riser, just kind of by nature, and my wife is not. So usually I'll, get up and kind of get all that stuff ready to go and made and everything. And, have that ready for her when she gets up. And then if I, in a normal off season, I might be substitute teaching or doing whatever. And so, head off and do that until the afternoon. But, right now, just I try to get my workouts and my throwing and stuff in here in the morning before about lunchtime, and then, work on some projects or, something I want to do or whatever, mess with some raspberries is kind of what I've been up to right now, trying to get those in the ground. But just kind of things like that. And then, read the good book and it's lights out.
And that's the life right there. You touched on kind of your routine and staying in shape. The coronavirus has really impacted everybody all across the country. So I'm curious for you, just the unknown, the staying in shape, kind of staying baseball ready for, if and when that call comes. We saw on your social media accounts a couple weeks ago your video, the Rocky impersonation working out. That was really funny. If you haven't seen it, you got to pump your social media so folks can go check that out. But, is that a normal routine for you to stay in shape for baseball season?
Well, let me preface that with there was a lot of boredom that went into that. We thought, we were kind of bored. So, because when we came back, it was kind of a 2-week mandatory quarantine. So we're just sitting at the house, just, about pulling our hair out with, which I don't have a whole lot left. But anyhow, we just decided to do that. And it was kind of fun, just kind of do a little spoof of that. But yeah, we kind of had to get creative a little bit with doing some workouts and, doing reverse lunges or whatever, and instead of holding weights, just holding, a couple logs or some rounds or whatever. And, same thing with kind of whatever. And I cut a lot of wood anyway, so I think that's a great workout, just about as good as you can get. So my wood shed's about full. I'm actually going to go pick up some more this afternoon and split that up and get it stacked. And my wood shed will probably be about done.
There you go. That might be the most unique way that we've heard of somebody staying in shape and staying ready to go. We are, of course, visiting with Cy Sneed, pitcher for the Houston Astros, here on Sidetracked, presented by Pepsi. Cy, we got to talk about your 2019 season. Had to be just such a special year for you. Opened the year in Round Rock, pitched really well for the Express, got called up to the Astros late in June, ended up spending quite a bit of time with that club. Take us through the day you got called up, kind of your major league debut, all the emotions. What was that day like for you?
Man, it was just crazy. It's something that you you hope and dream about, and I mean, ever since you're a little kid. And I really, really liked the way Mickey Story did it. When somebody would get called up, he'd bring everybody together and get everybody in the clubhouse, and everybody knows it's about to be just so exciting for somebody, and there's 25 guys and we don't know who it's going to be. And so and then to hear him say my name, man, I just couldn't believe it. It was amazing. Really fortunate I was able to get, some family in for the game. It was a day game the next day, and just kind of all the way everything worked out with, 3 people coming, and there was 3 seats on a one-way flight from Idaho to Houston that they only do once a week. And like, just how everything worked out, it was, it was just incredible. So, and then, yeah, like you said, I got to spend quite a bit of time up, and, we did some back and forth, but just really in general, it was a great year. I love my time in Round Rock. The staff, great. Obviously the fans, the ballpark is phenomenal. I mean, yeah, it was a pretty incredible year. And, I look back with a lot of fond memories.
Well, I'm glad you said that about Mickey. We talked to Jack Mayfield here on the show a couple weeks ago, and that was one of the things that we talked about, was just what a special environment that was, and the way that Mickey does that. And I wish that was something that more fans got to see or got to experience, just the emotion. But one thing we said with Jack was when Jack got his call up, I was randomly passing through the clubhouse. I stood and watched and kind of just took it all in, and there was 25 guys in that clubhouse, and you would have thought each one of those 25 guys all got called up. Was that kind of the same for you, just the support of your teammates and how close of a group you were, and everybody was just excited that it was you getting the call, as I'm sure you were?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's one of those things, and everybody knows that it's a possibility. In AAA, it's a possibility for anybody. But there's just that timing aspect of it, a day here or there, and a little rolled ankle or a little tweak, and there's just so much randomness to it that I think that guys really do just get so excited for each other, because that is, I mean, ever since you're knee high to a grasshopper, that's what you're trying to do, to get that call to the big leagues. And so, but yeah, it was great. I mean, I just got showered with, I think we just had bottled water, and we just got showered with that. I was soaking wet, and everybody's giving you a hug. And I mean, it was great. And really being able to call my wife and, tell her, and then, call my brother and call my parents and, some other family and stuff. And it was just like, it was really cool being able to tell them, hey, I got some good news.
Oh, that is awesome. Well, Si, man, we loved having you in Round Rock last year. Of course, very talented pitcher. You were a AAA All-Star for us a year ago. Love talking about baseball, but we got to shift gears now and talk about really the important task at hand, and that is our Round Rock Harry Midnight. Of course, we don't know when that night's going to be. Sometime in the next year or two, hopefully, we'll get to host that theme night. But you and I were chatting back and forth, kind of leading up to the show. I shared with you some of the logos, the imagery. We sent you some of our merchandise that hopefully will be up there pretty soon. But tell us, your professional opinion. What was your reaction when you saw the logo, heard about the idea? Like, give us your reaction.
Well, I think that this is the logo.
Hey, there it is.
And as a hairy man, I really felt represented, and it might be the best promo I've ever seen, and that's not an exaggeration. I was very thrilled about it. The whole kind of the folklore of the hairy man character growing up in the wilderness, which I wholeheartedly support. And I thought it was great. It's a group of guys that, might be a little misrepresented, and it was very nice to feel accepted and really represented well by the.
Well, you were one of the first guys I thought of when we were kind of putting this idea together. And you talk about timing. This is something that we've been working on for a couple of years. This idea and kind of developing it and fine tuning it. And again, you coming through Round Rock, crossing the timing. It's all what it's all about. You talk about kind of those same guys getting misrepresented. Another one of those guys, Yukon Cornelius, of course, of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer fame. You're a big fan. We talked about your social media. Yep. He's all over your Twitter. Your glove has Yukon Cornelius stitched on the side. And one of my favorite moments from the Astros last season was there was a game late in the year. You were pitching for the Astros. the broadcast on AT&T Sports Network, they were talking about that Yukon Cornelius connection, and they did like a side by side of you on the mound and Yukon Cornelius. It was just really funny. So take us through, that the striking resemblance, kind of your connection with that.
I guess I never really understood the resemblance on that until it started getting brought up a lot. It was really funny, through the years I've had different teammates, say that, hey, or Yukon or whatever, and come in, and I never really thought anything of it. And then I think it was really Tony Kemp that really brought it to light. And so it kind of as a joke, I got it on one of my gloves, and then I ran out of gloves, and all the other ones were broken. So I had to start using that one. And, then I got called up, which is kind of funny because then they're doing stuff. But yeah, I think it is kind of a fun little thing. I have his little like pictures, all my like profile pictures and stuff, which I just think is funny. And I mean, hey, he lives up here somewhere, and he likes to do the kind of stuff I like to do. So go Yukon.
There you go. That's awesome. If you run into him, invite him down. He's more than welcome to join us for Harry Man Night, whenever that may be. Well, Si, the last thing I had for you, something
probably be really good.
That'd be. I mean, they're at the first pitch. I mean, he can borrow your glove, probably. I mean, the whole deal. We got it taken care of.
Perfect. Absolutely.
That is awesome. The last thing I want to ask about, something we've kind of talked about with a lot of different folks over the course of our show. 2019 was your first year pitching in Round Rock, of course, your first year with the Express. But I'm curious, were there any kind of games or moments or memories from your time with the Express that really stand out as particularly memorable for you?
Yeah, I had two starts back to back that were one I carried I think a perfect game into the eighth, like 7 1/3 or 7 2/3 or something, and really that game was I'd put in a lot of work and trying to make a couple little adjustments and with Drew Friend's pitching coach and Dwayne Peterson, our strength guy, and really working with them a lot to try to just nail down a couple little things in my delivery. And I just felt like that game, it really came out and things were working really good. And then the very next outing was a rain delay restart or however they say that. And I think I threw another 8 innings that day and just threw really, really well both those starts. And just everything felt like it was just right. And that's a huge testament to those guys of getting me ready. And then I think shortly thereafter, maybe just a couple outings after that, is when I got called up. So, those were great. And, I learned a lot of things in that time, those, maybe 2-3 weeks of how to be in my delivery a little better and things. And so really, I thought that propelled me to be able to have success at the next level.
That's awesome. I'm glad you brought up that I think it was 8 innings, maybe 1 hit, shutout ball. It was early in the year, but it's funny on the communication side, we do this 140 times a year, and you never know what you're going to see over the course of a baseball game. But every so often you have a game like that where you get down to the 7th inning and it's like, hey, we need to get our photographers ready. We need to get the TV folks ready. We were on standby. Yeah. That was such a fun game and a great performance. Si, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. We really appreciate it. Hope you enjoy the Harry Man merch. Like we said, you're hopefully going to be, even better, going to be a lock to join the Astros this year. But, who knows? With that timing, maybe we'll get you in a Harry Man uniform somewhere down the road.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. That is Si Sneed, pitcher for the Express and the Astros in 2019, joining us from his home up in Alaska to talk all things Harry Man, kind enough to join us here on Sidetracked, presented by Pepsi. Well, that was real. He was actually up there in Alaska joining us here on Sidetracked. So thanks again to Si. And, using him as inspiration, we are inviting Express fans to submit photos of their best quarantine beards online at rrexpress.com. We're going to have a little contest. Submit your photos from now until Friday, May 29th. What we're going to do from there is compile all of our favorites for a fan vote that'll begin on Monday, June 1st. That'll run through a week, and then the winner will be announced on Monday, June 8th to win some great Round Rock Harry Man prizes, including some merch that you've seen here on the show, t-shirt, a cap, and some autographed baseballs from Jack Mayfield and Chris Davinsky. So get your beard photos in. Don't worry, it doesn't need to be a real beard either. We encourage you to get creative, or, even if you've got one of these guys laying around, that we will certainly welcome those submissions. Well, of course, in addition to our Harry Man fun, the Round Rock Express remain committed to connecting with you, the fans, and serving our community during this time when there's no baseball going on at Dell Diamond. And In accordance with Governor Abbott's plan to reopen Texas, we're incredibly excited to be able to offer Round Rock Express camps this summer at Dell Diamond. The first one runs June 1st through 4th. In total, we have 9 different half-day and full-day baseball and softball camps for a variety of ages and skill levels. For more information on our full slate of camp offerings, all the safety procedures that we're implementing to keep both our staff and the campers safe, please visit expresscamps.com. From there, you can also see a link to sign up and register your kiddos for Round Rock Express summer camps. Well, as we mentioned last week, we've joined forces with over 100 other clubs across minor league baseball for the Community First initiative to benefit Feeding America. Through the end of this month, just here in a couple days, fans can visit milb.com/community-first to make a donation. From there, if you select the Round Rock Express as the beneficiary, we will automatically redirect those funds to the Central Texas Food Bank. In addition, for every $10 worth of donations that we receive under the Round Rock Express name, we're going to donate 1 ticket to a local first responder that's been fighting the COVID-19 pandemic here on the front lines in Central Texas. Once again, for more information, please visit the website there on your screen, milb.com/community-first. Well, we are still collecting submissions for our Backyard Baseball series. As you've seen over the last couple weeks, we're encouraging fans to submit videos of your kiddos playing baseball in the backyard. We're going to send those over to the voice of the Express, Mike Capps. He's going to call the action as he sees it. We'll layer those two things together, post those to our YouTube channel for all of our fans to enjoy. If you need some inspiration, maybe some idea gathering, here's a submission from our friend Austin.
From shoes to shades to a deadly stare. And an aggressive attitude at the plate, Austin strikes fear in Little League pitchers in Manor and even in his dad as he clobbers Dad's pitch deep to left center field. Austin on the run around the bases. An aggressive turn on all 3 bases. And inside the park home run for Austin. Austin, take a bow.
Well, finally here this afternoon, we'd like to extend one final reminder about our Rail Yard Team Store Item of the Week presented by Viatran. It is our socially distant before it was cool tee. Those are going to be available for $28 at the Rail Yard Team Store. Like we said, plenty of great Harryman merchandise also available. We've got 920 adjustable caps from New Era. We also have a lot of fitted caps. Of course, the beards that you've seen displayed here on the show between me and Sneed. And of course, a lot of other great t-shirts. There's a full line of Harryman merchandise available digitally through the Rail Yard Team Store. Check out rrexpress.com for that full lineup. Well, that's going to do it for this week's special Harryman episode of Sidetracked presented by Dell Technologies. I'd like to extend a big Harry thank you to our 3 guests this afternoon. Jane DiGesualdo, local Round Rock historian and author. Jason Klein, the co-founder of the design firm Brandiose. And of course, Sneed, pitcher for the Houston Astros. Another big thank you goes out to Dell Technologies and to L2 Productions for making this entire show possible. Last thing before we go here, on a quick personal note, I want to take a second to dedicate this show this week to my grandmother, Kathy Knock. She passed away last week at the age of 86 in her home of Wichita, Kansas. Now, our family were not able to do a funeral or any kind of service right now because of the restrictions on mass gatherings up in the state of Kansas. So I wanted to take just a minute to honor her using this platform that I do have here on Facebook real quick. Now, if you asked her, she'd be the first to tell you that she wasn't particularly interested in or maybe even really cared about the game of baseball. But she knew that I did, and that was really all she needed to become a fan. I guess the timing of this week's show is particularly ironic that it was our Harryman special because over the years, she absolutely despised the facial hair that my younger brother Jason, my cousin Tyler, and I started to grow over the last couple of years. It seemed like every time our family had to get together, it was a lecture about cleaning our face and cleaning off these beards. So particularly ironic that we just did a whole show about facial hair and beards. And I'll be the last thing I want to say. I'll be the first one to tell you, I wish more than anything we were all at Dell Diamond. The baseball season was going on. Life was a little bit more normal. But perhaps one bright spot amidst this otherwise dark time that we're all going through has been the ability to connect with families, spend more time with your loved ones, whether you're doing that remotely or if you're lucky enough to do it in person. So hopefully everybody out there has been able to do some of that. And I'll tell you too, she was a big fan of this show. I feel particularly thankful that this is something that we were able to launch. She absolutely loved tuning in every week here on Facebook Live, getting to see her first and favorite grandson via the power of the internet from over 500 miles away. watching me live out what I consider to be my dream job, even if all it was talking about baseball. So in that spirit, we're going to be right back here next Tuesday afternoon, 2 p.m. here on Facebook Live. We've got another great slate of guests lined up. Stay tuned to Express social media channels to see that in the coming days. Until then, my name's Andrew Feltz. On behalf of everyone at the Round Rock Express, please stay safe, stay healthy, take care of each other, and we'll see you back here next week.